comms for the practical prepper. We'll talk about different aspects of communications and what might need to happen in case the grid goes down or something bad happens. But this is a good idea to talk about with you and your family. First thing you need to determine is what your capabilities are and your tools and what you have access to you. Everyone has cell phones now, so that's a good thing. Texting works when it limited cell service, but it's not always going to work, and everything still ties into the central office. So they'll keep going if the grid goes down until they run out of fuel. Next option is radio communications, and that's what we're going to talk about. There's several different ways to communicate, and some of them need licensings, and some of them don't. You need to think about what is best for you and your family and your situation. When the power is still up, you can still text. Texting works great. When the network's down or bogged down, it takes a lot smaller bandwidth. So texting works if that's the route you want to go. Again, the grid still has to be up and the power still has to be at the central office. So once the power goes out, these cell towers will go down unless they got backup generators that are operated by diesel, and that they're only good as long as the diesel is there. That's why a good way to have is radio communications. And we'll talk about some different types. There's many types. This is the cheapo Chinese Baofeng, and we'll talk about the different 4 types, 2 of which you do need a license for. First is the MURS, multi-use radio service. It uses channels. There's 4 frequencies that can be used, and it's good for local. It's good for a few blocks. It's basically line of sight, and we'll talk a little bit about line of sight a little bit later. There's the 5 different channels and their frequencies and their bandwidth. And it's limited to power of 2 watts. And there's one other that's limited in power, which is the family radio service. So you'll see a lot of these people, these little, we call them bubble radios. You can get them at Walmart. And FRS is good. It's not bad. It's local, very low power, several different frequencies you can use. But we found it is good for neighborhood watch type thing and close communications. So it's not bad. It's not bad little radio to have. They're good to use when you're up hunting or whatever with a group. Again, line of sight. We'll talk more again about line of sight. It's not licensed. You don't need a license to it. Anybody can operate on it. And you're just limited to the frequencies you can use. And it's listed out on the FCC site. Some of them have multi-use, so they'll have FRS and GMRS, so you got to be careful when you're operating these little bubble pack radios and not go into the GMRS frequencies because that is licensed. You must have a license for that. Talk a little bit about GMRS. GMRS, you can increase your power. It's up to 50 watts. You can have an external antenna up to 50 feet. And they do have repeater capability. Repeaters are good. Again, power goes out, repeater's not going to work. But GMRS is a good step. I like to call it the gateway radio because once you get hooked on that and you're using repeaters, you're probably going to want to get your amateur license. That's how it happened with me. Talks a little bit about the functionality. The neat thing about a GMRS license is once you get it, your entire family can use it, and your immediate family, and they consider the immediate family brothers, sisters, mothers, dads, uncles, grandparents, grandchildren. It's really neat. So it's just one license for a family, and the family is huge. I mean, it's your entire family, your whole tree, basically. So that is a neat aspect about it. There's 30 channels with a bandwidth of 25 kilohertz. Again, repeater capability. This is what a lot of people use now when they're going four-wheeling because you can get more power out of it. Mobile bases have 50 watts, some 25 watts. So it's nice. It is a nice thing to have. Here's the different frequencies and their bandwidths. All right, CB. Everyone knows CB, breaker 19. It's a good thing to have. Again, you're limited in power with these. There's 40 channels you can use. Again, it's not a bad thing to have. It really isn't. Everybody has to have CB though, and it's good for local, citywide. Again, line of sight. You may get a little bit of bounce off the ionosphere, but it doesn't go as far because of the limited power as some other services. Here's the different frequencies that's used with Citizens Band. And you can check out the 47 CFR Part 95. Talks about all the rules of all of these. Operate in Citizens Band. You can do it anywhere where the FCC allows it in the United States. Alrighty, you can't. There's no exclusive channels on any of these. No exclusive frequencies, I should say. Then we talk about amateur radio service. This is the bomb. This is what I have. I have this and my GMRS. But there's multiple frequencies, up to 1500 watts. You can put an antenna tower up quite high, within practical reasons, of course. Mine's at 35 feet just because, I have an urban yard. I've seen some that are, 200 feet high with huge antenna arrays on them. Gets very expensive. They are testing. You have to take tests to get your amateur radio license. The first one's not hard. There's 3 total to take throughout to get different licenses and granted different privileges. So the technician, which we'll talk about, is the easiest. It wasn't hard. I found it quite easy. Anybody can do it, and that gets you on. You're open to the 1500 watts. You can operate on UHF, VHF, and limited HF on 10 meters. You can have a huge tower, and use repeaters all over the place. There's a new thing called digital that gets you across the country. It's pretty neat. The repeaters again. Power. Got to have your power. Talk about the licensing. There's technician. That's the first step. General. Once you get into general, that opens you up into HF or high frequency, which gets you to be able to not have to use repeaters and talk to people around the world. There is a limited frequency span that you can use on this. And then amateur extra, which opens everything up. And I only did amateur extra just to see if I could. No other reason. I don't know Morse code. I'm having a hard time learning it, so I'm not worried about that. But I can talk voice. It's called phone when you're in amateur radio. It talks about the different licenses. 35 questions for technician, 35 for general. It's 50 for extra. Extra is hard. General's not bad. You learn a little bit more about electronics and the frequencies and how it bounces around and all that. But for all in all, general's not hard. That'll get you on HF, which will get you onto the around the world. This is the amateur radio band plan, and this is the allocated slots of the frequencies so that you're allowed to use, and then a different they're called bands. So that lists all the different frequencies. It's actually color coded for what you're allowed to use depending on your license class. I have a copy of it up on my shack all the time. It's a good reference to have. This is how this works. Radio. So we got the ionosphere. And with our HF, which is 30 to 40 megahertz, or 10 meters and up, or lower, we'll say, it bounces off the ionosphere. So as long as the ionosphere is ionized, which happens from sunspots, it's how you get bounce across the world. And then you have your ground wave, which is your VHF and UHF. We talked about line of sight. You'll see all these advertised as 35 miles. Yes, it's 35 miles if you're standing on top of a calm ocean looking at the horizon. Okay, the horizon's about 35 miles. So that's where that comes in. Any obstructions is going to block your signal. So that's basically how the radio stuff works. It's a good idea to think about. You don't have to go all in like I have. Start with FRS with your family and get a plan and come up with a way to do this. Well, this is Butcher the Patriot, Kilo Echo Zero Tango Whiskey Bravo, or WQZE 662. Be safe, be prepared, have a great day.